here. I'm always talking to myself.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to get started. We are, first of all, I'll say some of the prayer things. Big Thanksgiving. We've got our youngest, we had her 30th birthday, Julie, and our Amanda and Elise and our grandbaby Finley have been here. So that has been Thanksgiving for us, big time. Scott's still hurting, but a little bit better. If I say it enough, maybe it'll happen. Okay, he's here. Alton and Kathy is not online or here, so please pray for both of them. And I know, I mean, it's really hard on Alton, but it's also really taking its toll on Kathy. Phil and Cherie, same thing. Kelly is not on from Canada. Keep her in your prayers. Lori Fisher, I looked online today. We were praying. She had her bone marrow last week. She is a silversmith that many of us know in town. She's back from MD Anderson. From the post on her journey page, I'm just guessing the news was not good. I don't know that to be a fact, but I would surmise that from the post. And she's home, and anyhow, so keep her in your prayers. Keep Richard, a friend of Cindy Duck's, who has COVID and has had a stem cell transplant. I didn't ask Cindy if she wants to unmute if there's any update on that.
Actually, Mary, the prayer helped, and he is now doing really well. He's out of ICU and he will probably go home here pretty soon. So the prayer definitely helps, and thank you, everybody.
Cindy, do you have any word about Bill Alman's son?
No, I don't.
The pharmacist. Okay. All right.
And then Luis brought prayer concerns. Lots of people in our family, lots of people in this room know the Geezys. Keep them all in your prayers. Jean collapsed and ended up, had some, I think it was probably some sugar different problems and was delusional. And she's in Gulf Point. Their daughter has MS and lupus and is on a walker and living at the Geezy's house. And I believe Jean was taking care of her. And Charles keeps falling. And so it is like a perfect storm, and they really need our prayers. Okay.
Nope. Just don't also forget we have Julie and Bob on the line. Ben, it may seem in comparison to people who are sick, people who are hurting, but Ben is at training camp with the Packers, and it's stressful. I mean, there are things that I suppose, we should be bold enough to say whatever's best for Ben, but we really want to see him make it. So keep Ben and Julie and Bob in your prayers too. God, we have so many people that we know, people that we care about. I wonder sometime if the whole world is in this same situation. We only know our little corner of it, but we're bold enough to bring these ones to you. It's important to us. And so that's what we come saying, that what we want is to see people healed. We always struggle with the idea that there's a plan that we don't know. But we know that there's understanding and there's peace that surpasses that understanding. And those are the things that we always pray for. You know the plan, but we also have the right, we have been invited to tell you that we look for healing for these people, and we're thankful when we see it. We see in your words these lessons for us. Always, before we start, I always remember to ask for understanding from these words that'll help us to fall closer into your will. Amen.
Okay, we're on week 3 of Esther. And remember, we're studying women in the Old Testament, and we did Deborah and Rahab and Ruth, and now we're doing Esther. And this is our 3rd week on Esther. And remember, Mordecai, who was a relative of hers and was basically her father, he and all, Esther had just asked Mordecai and all the Jews in Susa, which is the capital, one of the capitals of Persia, Media, how you say it, and to pray for 3 days. And Esther and her handmaidens were also praying, or were fasting for 3 days. And remember, when they were fasting, the reason they were fasting is they were fasting and praying. Esther had gone to see King Xerxes, and he offered her his scepter, and so the prayers worked. That's where we left off. And one of the reminders here is, don't let it concern you that God is not mentioned in the book of Esther, because you see God is all over the book of Esther. And I told Scott last night when we were finishing up studying, it hit me this week. It's sort of like our lives. Is God all over our lives? God's all over our lives, even if we don't mention it on a daily basis. And so today we're definitely going to see how Esther, the book of Esther, has God's presence everywhere. You have something to add?
Not right now.
Okay. I'm going to start at Esther 5, and we ended up at verse 3, but I'm going to start back at verse 1. Esther 5, verse 1. On the 3rd day, Esther put on her royal attire and stood in the inner court of the palace across from the king's quarters. The king was sitting on his royal throne in the royal courtroom facing the entrance. As soon as the king saw King Esther standing in the court, she found favor in his sight. The king extended the gold scepter in his hand towards Esther, and she approached and touched the tip of his scepter. What is it, Queen Esther? The king inquired. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given to you.
Other than this, I mean, we kind of covered this, but that idea of half the kingdom is a saying that gets used in that part of the world even now, but it's not really talking about half the kingdom. He's saying you've got a really rich reward coming a lot of the time. You know, I'll reward you with up to half the kingdom. If somebody ever actually said, okay, I'll take the northern half of your kingdom, it would not have worked out well. He would have found a way to kind of tone it down. But it's this grand gesture. He recognizes she wants something, and he's in a good mood. So he says, tell me what you want, I'll give it to you.
If it pleases the king, Esther replied, may the king and Haman come today to a banquet I have prepared for the king. Hurry, commanded the king, and bring Haman so we can do as Esther has requested. So the king and Haman went to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And as they drank their wine, the king said to Esther, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be fulfilled. Esther replied, this is my petition and my request. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it pleases the king to grant my petition and fulfill my request, may the king and Haman come tomorrow to the banquet I will prepare for them. Then I will answer the king's question.
So I mentioned recently that there are places where they're rewriting the Bible, just changing it to be more modern, whatever there are, or to be more conducive to some people's politics. And if we look at these stories in the Bible as just clever teachings, then why not modernize them? Why not change them? And so part of my goal on this is to help you look at these stories that seem kind of flat because they never get explained to us, and see that what happens is really consistent with what you see going on around you. These are real people doing real people things. and it's not dull. This one reads like almost not a soap opera, maybe, but a movie script or a Broadway play. So you see that Esther has come as far as she could. She takes this chance. If she catches Xerxes in a bad mood, she can get in a lot of trouble. She can even be killed for doing this. But he's in a good mood. He extends his scepter, calls her in, says, you know, what do you, he knows she wants something. You don't do that unless you want. So he says, so tell me what you want. I'll give it to you. You're my queen. So this is Xerxes, you know, this is the kind of guy. And she says, if it please the king, there's probably something we should pay attention. It's sort of like us saying, or like when Jesus says, not my, this is what I want, but not my will, but yours. So she's definitely acknowledging the king. It's not a bad way to butter him up. I mean, he's already told her, ask for it. She says, only if it pleases you. But if it pleases you, I would like you and your top guy to come over to my place for a banquet that I've already got, you know, in motion tomorrow. Now, he knows that's not really her ask. She's buttering him up, right? How do we know that? Well, because when they come to her place and they have a couple of goblets of wine, the king again says, okay, now tell me what it is you want. So he knows what's going on. I mean, he gets it. This banquet is there to butter him up. And she says, if it please the king, you know, she goes through this whole thing again. What I want is for you and Haman to come back tomorrow for another feast that I'm going to set for you. And then at that banquet, I'll answer your question. And the question is, what do you want? So I'll tell you what I want tomorrow, but I'm going to do a second banquet. You've got to look at this and understand what's going on. She's telling him she's buttering him up, and he likes it. He's probably amused with it. You know, well, this should be good. What is it that she's looking for? I mean, and so he says, okay, yeah, I'll bite. Let's do that.
That day, verse 9, that day Haman went out full of joy and glad of heart. At the king's gate, however, he saw Mordecai, who did not rise or tremble in fear of his presence, and Haman was filled with rage towards Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman restrained himself and went home. And calling for his friends and his wife Zeresh, Haman recounted to them his glorious wealth, his many sons, and all the ways the king had honored and promoted him over the other officials and servants. What is more, Haman added, Queen Esther invited no one but me to join the king at a banquet she prepared, and I'm invited back tomorrow along with the king. Yet none of this satisfies me as long as I see Mordecai, the Jew, sitting at the king's gate. His wife Zeresh and his friends told him, have them build a gallows 50 cubits high, and ask the king in the morning to have Mordecai hanged on it. Then go to the banquet with the king and enjoy yourself. The advice pleased Haman, and he had the gallows constructed.
So here we go. And this is where I tell you, look at this and see if these don't look like real people to you. The queen says to the king, I want you to come to a banquet at my house. And I also want you to bring Haman, your number one advisor. And Haman hears this and he goes, oh my gosh, I mean, I'm in the club now. I'm the only one, other than the king, I must be important. I'm the only one that she invited other than Xerxes. And he's so, you know, this is the ultimate social climber. And on his way home, he is so happy to be this important, to be honored by the queen. And then he spots Mordecai, the Jew, and he won't bow down and tremble. He won't, you know, go down on his face and in the ground. And it makes Haman so angry because he wants to be important. And here's this guy who won't acknowledge how important he is. Does it sound like any humans that you know? It sounds like a lot of them that I know. And he is so upset by this that even all of the honors, all the accolades that he's received, they say it's like ashes in your mouth. He can't stand the idea of breathing the same air as Mordecai. As much good stuff as he has in his life, this one thing, this one guy ruins it for it. And I have known too many people that get into these bickering arguments with someone, and it's the only important thing in their whole life, right? You've seen them just obsess over it. So Haman goes home. He's bragging to his family, look how powerful I am. Look at all the, I mean, this great stuff that I have earned. And here again, I don't want to be political, so I've got to do both sides. If this doesn't sound like something that Donald Trump might do, go home and tell his family how important he is. I mean, it's a personality thing, and he wants to be important. Haman wants to be, and he tells his family, look at all this important stuff that I'm doing. And he says, but I got to tell you, it's all worthless, because there's that Jew over there who won't acknowledge me. And I can hardly stand knowing that I'm breathing the same air. And his wife says, well, you've gotten so important now, the king will give you just anything you want. Have a gallows built. And I've said, we think of gallows as a big platform and you hang them. We did some research on this before, and they have a tendency to impale people, to hang them up on a pole, and it gets translated the same way. Anyway, this big, tall execution spot, however they go about it. And she said, just prepare it today, have your people go out and build it. And in the morning, because you're going to go to lunch with the king and the queen, right? In the morning, you go to the king and you say, hey, it's no big deal. Do you mind if I impale that guy, if I stick him up on, he's no good for the kingdom. He's not following your orders. And the wife says, he's going to give you permission. And so you can have Mordecai strung up. And by the time the banquet comes around, you'll be happy. You see how ugly this is, how where they have gotten so consumed with their own power and importance. So yeah, have him strung up and then go to your banquet and be happy about it.
Chapter 6. That night, sleep escaped the king. So he ordered the book of records, the chronicles, to be brought in and read to him. And there it was found, recorded, that Mordecai had exposed Bigthana and Teresh, two of the eunuchs who guarded the king's entrance, when they had conspired to assassinate King Xerxes. The king inquired, what honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this act? Nothing. Nothing has been done for him, replied the king's attendants. I'm going to stop there.
So this, when Mary said that they don't specifically say God, and yet he's all over it, this is one of those bizarre convergence of events, right? We're supposed to see this is not just coincidence. So remember, tomorrow morning, Haman is going to come and say, hey, I would like to execute this Mordecai guy. The night before, the king can't sleep, and he has the chronicles, the book brought and read to him, and they read out the part about Mordecai exposing that assassination attempt. The king has forgotten about it. He says, oh, hey, yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah, that guy, he turned in, he
saved me.
What do we ever do for him? Because you already see now Xerxes is fond of big gestures. And a guy who saved his life, who exposed an assassination attempt, he should do something big for him. He should honor him. He says, he turns to one of his helpers. He says, what do we ever do for that guy? And the guy says, nothing, sir. And he goes, oh no, we gotta fix that. And it's an opportunity for Xerxes to show off how magnanimous he is. So this, once again, is another one of these weird coincidences, if we believe in coincidence, that just the night before Haman comes in to ask for Mordecai to be killed, the king has remembered that Mordecai saved his life. this isn't going to end well. So
I kept thinking to myself, sometimes we've read other parts that it said, and, God appeared to them in a dream. I just feel like this is God's urging that he couldn't sleep that night. And he asked for the book of Chronicles. I mean, like I said, God is all over this.
yeah, they happened to read the page about Mordecai.
Who wrote this book?
We don't know. I wish I did. We don't. The tradition among the rabbis is that it was Moses. We don't know.
The phraseology also occurred to me kind of like the Mary. The sleep occurred, and it's sleeping so he had a sighting of somehow.
Yeah.
If you read it from the standpoint of human existence, and Mordecai got there sacrificing, but the children here, as a human being, I don't get that picture that God Almighty gets in there, get that coincidence that green out of control. But isn't there a message there? It's not a human calendar that's processing here. It's the note from the Almighty that we're supposed to be getting up, and he's not mentioned at all. So
They don't say the name,
if
but
I'm not Christian or not Catholic, how am I going to pick that up?
well, yeah, I don't know that you will. But I mean, the people when they wrote this were not Christian because Christ wasn't born. I mean, where does knowledge like that come from? I think things are revealed. It certainly. How would you know if there's not someone to tell you? There's a place, Gene, and is your mic on, by the way?
I think so.
Because to be fair, well, you might check it, because to be fair to the people at home, for them to be able to hear. Okay, if it's green, it's on. There's a guy traveling from Africa, from Ethiopia, and Philip gets sent to him. And Philip says, do you understand what you're reading? He's reading the scriptures. Do you understand what you're reading? And he says, how can I understand it if someone doesn't explain it to me? All I can tell you, if you're asking for a big general rule, I don't know. But here today, I've done a whole bunch of work on this. I'm here to tell you what it says. But a bigger lesson than that, I don't know.
Well, and I always think, go ahead,
Hold on.
John Paul.
So I don't see how they think Moses wrote this.
No,
Yeah,
that's
I mean, that's
it's
like, if you're gonna pick somebody's name out of a hat, that is like,
they
The rabbis
really?
seem to appear to do
they
that.
say that Moses wrote the book of Job as well. I said it's tradition. So are we getting off track or
Yeah.
what? But let's just get off track. I told you they have 10 commandments. It turns into 613 mitzvahot, and then they have the law, and then they have the midrash, which is the oral teachings from rabbis. Oral teachings, two of them can be exactly opposite of each other, 180 degrees opposite. And they say they are both authoritative. They're both right. So if these things seem puzzling to you,
They are.
they are. And that's where we lag in not being a part of that culture, so we don't, but then again, we had someone one time, we were interviewing a church, and they talked about baptism, and they said baptism doesn't save you, but it's necessary. And Mary and I both said, but if it's necessary, we don't understand. And they basically said, you don't belong here. That's what they told us. You don't belong here. It doesn't make sense. Gene asked the question and I answered it. It doesn't make sense. We don't know who wrote this. We just don't.
Well, but see, to me, that fits my perspective. It's a matter of faith.
It's always a matter of faith. What we're trying to communicate here, though, part of it is, as I said, that if you read these as just kind of old wives' tales, then when somebody wants to change them, you're probably inclined to say, well, yeah, what difference does it make? Give us some good teachings, and that's good enough. But if you really dig into these stories, you see real people here. All of a sudden, you look around and you realize this is a recount of real human beings' lives. It's a big story, which is why it made the big book. But this stuff goes on all the time. That's what I hope to convey out of this, is that this isn't just make-believe stuff. And as you begin to see the details like we're doing, if you take the time to, you begin to go, hey, wait a minute, this story makes sense to me. So far, we've got Haman planning to come in and ask for Mordecai to be killed. The morning after, Mordecai has remembered, Xerxes has remembered that Mordecai saved his life. And now we see where it all comes to a head.
Verse 4, who's in the court? The king asked. Now Haman had just entered the outer court of the palace to ask the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows he had prepared for him. So the king's attendants answered him, Haman is there standing in the court. Bring him in, ordered the king. Haman entered, and the king asked him, what should be done for the man whom the king is delighted to honor? Now Haman thought to himself, whom would the king be delighted to honor more than me? And Haman told the king, for the man whom the king is delighted to honor, have them bring a royal robe that the king himself has worn, and a horse on which the king himself has ridden, one with a royal crest placed on its head. Let the robe and the horse he entrusted to one of the king's most noble princes. Let them array the man the king wants to honor and parade him on the horse through the city square, proclaiming before him, this is what is done for a man whom the king is delighted to honor. Hurry, said the king to Haman, and do just as you propose. Take the robe and the horse to Mordecai the Jew, who's sitting at the king's gate. Do not neglect anything that you have suggested. So Haman took.
Let's stop there.
Okay.
Because so you see this convergence. Haman is there to ask to kill Mordecai. The king has been up all night. He's just realized, can you imagine being someone who saved the king's life and not getting a reward? I mean, really, this is an oversight. And the king says, oh my gosh, I've got to do something about this. This looks bad. And he says, who's out there? He asked one of his people, who's out there in the lobby that I can get to do something for me? And Haman has just come in to ask to kill Mordecai. And he comes in, he says, Mordecai, he says, Haman, come in, my friend. He says, what should the king do for someone he wants to honor? Now, Haman, immediately, he's so full of himself. He says, this has got to be about me. He's asking me, he says, he thinks the king is saying, Haman, you're my top guy. What can I do for you? And you notice Haman's response. He doesn't say, I want a whole bunch of gold. He doesn't say, I want a new palace up, where the breeze hits. He thinks it's about him, and he says, oh, what you want to do is this fabulous spectacle. You dress the guy, wink, wink, this guy, we don't know who it is. You dress him in your own royal robes, and you put him on a royal horse, and you parade him through town, and you tell everybody, look at this man, the king. This is what the king does for people that he honors. And Mordecai is thinking, this is beautiful. But you see Haman, you see what's important to Haman. He's already got money. He wants the acclaim. He wants the attention. He wants the power. And so he asked for this procession. And the king, Xerxes, says, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. He says, good, you see to it. Go get the horse, go get the robe, do the stuff, and put it on Mordecai. And there's Haman. He's sitting here, and he was just about to say, I'd like to kill Mordecai. And the king says, go get this royal robe. And he goes, wait, you were talking about him? Oops. This is a classic. I mean, if you don't think this looks like a movie or a telenovela or something, this is it. And not only does Haman have to back off on his request to kill him, he's literally got to lead the horse holding Mordecai through town, announcing to everyone, this is the man who the king is honoring. Look at this. This is the worst possible thing that could have happened to Haman.
Can you just imagine Haman having to do that? I mean, this is a man who his day was ruined, that Mordecai was just standing there and Now he has to walk around, and he gets to say, this is what is done for the man whom the king is delighted to honor.
Yep.
He's the one that's shouting that out.
Is there a lesson here, obviously, I think, for the Agathite?
Agagites, the Jew haters.
Yeah, be careful when you ask for it, you may get it.
You know, I ultimately, absolutely, yes. As we see how the story unfolds, those Jew-hating Agagites do not do well in this. But the step down for Haman, the slap in the face of not only, this is a guy, remember, he hates him so badly that even when everything in his life is perfect, he can't stand the thought that Mordecai is out there. And now he's got to lead him through town on the back of the king's horse in the purple robes and everything. This is as bad as it can get, except it's not.
So Haman took the robe and the horse, arrayed Mordecai, and paraded him through the city square, crying out before him, this is what is done for a man whom the king is delighted to honor. Then Mordecai returned to the king's gate, and Haman rushed home with his head covered in grief. So the one thing here it hit me is Mordecai gets this incredible honor, and after his incredible honor, he goes back to work. Remember, he goes back to work, and Haman rushed home with his head covered in grief.
Yep. That's an ad. I mean, it's not really covered with anything. You get the image of ashes in the hair and stuff, but it's just telling us that Haman is just, he's fallen apart with grief over this.
Haman told his wife Zeresh and all his friends everything that had happened. His advisors and his wife Zeresh said to him, since Mordecai, before whom your downfall has begun, is Jewish, you will not prevail against him, for surely you will fall before him. While they were still speaking with Haman, the king's eunuchs arrived and rushed him to the banquet that Esther had prepared. Oh my gosh.
Here you see the movie plot. I mean, you see it just unfold. You can picture the way the scenes are. He has to parade Mordecai through the streets, and he gets done, and it's ashes in his mouth, and he goes home. He goes, "You guys aren't going to believe this. What happened? I just, I'm so upset." And his wife and his advisors say, "Oh yeah, no, you're dead. You're in trouble." They don't even bother trying to tell him, "Well, this could work out," and he might have time to plot, or he might have time to run away, but instead, while they're having that discussion, the king's eunuchs show up and they go, hey, Haman, you're late for lunch. The king sent us to get you. We got the big banquet at the queen's house. This was going to be Haman's big triumphal moment. And instead, he knows that word is out that he's planning on killing all of Queen Esther's people. He's in trouble. And I just think it's kind of hilarious that his wife and his advisors don't bother saying, well, it might be okay. They say, no, you're pretty much a goner.
Something to note here that bothered me about this whole thing is, well, I kept thinking King Xerxes must have known that Haman had wanted to kill the Jews. And Scott says, Haman never told King Xerxes when he said at the beginning of this, give me the ability to kill all these people. He never said it. So I'm going to take you back real quick to Esther 3, verse 6. Then Haman informed King Xerxes, there's a certain people scattered and dispersed among the peoples of every province of the kingdom. Their laws are different from everyone else's, and they do not obey the king's laws. So it's not in the king's best interest to tolerate them. If it pleases the king, let a decree be issued to destroy them, and I will deposit 10,000 talents of silver into the royal treasury to pay those who carry it out. So King Xerxes knew that there was a group of people, a certain people that weren't obeying his laws, but he didn't know they were Jewish. And Haman went ahead and got the signet ring and wrote the decree. So remember, this is sometime between January and December. The decree has gone out that all the Jews are going to be killed. King Xerxes is unaware that it's Jews. He knows a group of people are going to be killed, but he doesn't know it's the Jews.
When we went over that, I tried to really make sure that you heard what was being said. The king says to Haman says, there's a group of people that, and if you read it in the Hebrew, it couldn't be more clear, but there are these people scattered through your kingdom, and they don't obey your laws. They do things their own way. They don't support you. It's not healthy for you to have them. And if you're okay with it, I'll just eradicate them for you. The king doesn't know that these are Jews. And the king, rather than say, well, tell me about your plan, pulls off his signet ring, hands it to Haman, and he says, you write it. Write it up any way you want to write it. Then take my ring and seal it with wax. And that's it. It becomes law. Okay. He didn't tell Xerxes all the facts. He felt like that's the quickest way to get what he wants. So Xerxes doesn't know that these are Jews. Kind of, I didn't want to do spoiler alert, but we're actually told exactly why this plays out the way it does, because Haman wrote the decree and signed it as if Xerxes has written it. Now the rest of the truth is going to come out.
Okay, so we've got Haman, who has just arrived at the banquet.
And this is the second banquet, remember. This is where she says she's going to reveal what it is she really wants.
Chapter 7. So the king and Haman went to dine with Esther the queen, and as they drank their wine on the second day, the king asked once more, Queen Esther, what is your petition? It will be given to you. What is your request? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be fulfilled. Queen Esther replied, if I have found favor in your sight, O king, and if it pleases the king, grant me my life as my petition, and the lives of my people as my request. For my people and I have been sold out to destruction, death, and annihilation. If we had merely been sold as men servants and maid servants, I would have remained silent, because no such distress would justify burdening the king. Then King Xerxes spoke up and asked Queen Esther, who is this, and where is the one who would devise such a scheme? Esther replied, the adversary and enemy is this wicked man Haman. And Haman stood in terror before the king and the queen.
Try real hard to picture this like a movie and to put yourself in the place of this guy. Xerxes gets there, they have a few goblets of wine, and he says, okay, all right, this. Tell me what it is you want, okay? It's all right for you to ask. Just tell me and I'll give it to you. And she says, well, if it please the king, all I'm asking for is that you grant me my life and the life of all my people. And this has got to be a shock. I mean, he's probably expecting she wants a new wing built on the palace, or she wants to bring, somebody in to have a big party. And she says, I want you to grant me my life and the life of all my people. And Xerxes is just sitting there trying to think, what are you talking about? And she says, yeah, my people have been sold out for destruction, annihilation, to be killed. Somebody has come up with this plot to have us all wiped out. And she says, if he had just conspired to sell us as slaves, I wouldn't even bother you with it, because something that trivial, is too small for the king to even notice. This is all diplomacy playing out, I mean, our modern day diplomats are very obtuse. You have to learn to listen for what's really being asked. But she says, if it was something as simple as selling our people as slaves, I wouldn't even bother the great Xerxes. But he wants to kill us all. He wants to eradicate us. And Xerxes is just livid. Someone is plotting to kill my queen and all of her people. Who's done this? And Haman is sitting there just going, oh man, that means there's no exit. There's no way out of this. I know where this is going. I'm in so much trouble. My wife told me I was in trouble. I mean, you just hear it. And then Esther finally gets to turn. She says, the enemy is this wicked man, Haman. You don't plot to kill the king's wife, to kill the queen, and not tell the king that that's what that meant when you ask. And you see the bind that Xerxes is in, because this document has been written and sealed with his signet ring.
And the other important thing to remember is Haman did not know Esther was a Jew.
He did not, because Mordecai had told her not to tell. Remember, all of this stuff, you say that because it doesn't say the word Yahweh, we're not supposed to get that God's hand is in this. Of course, we're supposed to see it. So yeah, Xerxes doesn't know. Xerxes doesn't care.
Oh, Haman doesn't. Haman doesn't know that.
Well,
Esther's
Haman
a
doesn't
Jew.
know either.
Yeah.
Xerxes doesn't know. Xerxes knows that Mordecai is a Jew. He says so. Mordecai the Jew. So to him it was no big deal. And of course Haman doesn't know, but by now he knows he's cooked.
Chapter 7, verse 7. In his fury, the king arose from drinking his wine and went to the palace garden, while Haman stayed behind to beg Queen Esther for his life, for he realized the king was planning a terrible fate for him.
Do you notice how often it talks about Xerxes drinking wine?
He's a party boy.
When they announced this plan and it set everybody in the city, in a tizzy, the king and Haman go up and drink and just are totally unaware. And they go to the first banquet and they drink, and they're at this banquet and they drink. And it says that when Xerxes hears what Haman has come up with, he's furious, and he gets up from his wine and charges out into the garden. Okay, he's taking a moment. He's so angry, he's taking a moment to sort of process it.
Just as the king returned from the palace garden to the banquet hall, Haman was falling on the couch where Esther was reclining. The king explained, would he actually assault the queen while I am in the palace? As soon as the words had left the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face.
Let's just deal with that real quick. Haman is left there to beg with the queen for his life. He knows he doesn't get to be the top advisor anymore, right? He understands he's in deep trouble, but at least he's pleading for his life. And he's there begging the queen, look, I didn't know you were a Jew. I didn't know it was you, okay? I'm sorry. Can you have a little pity on me? It was nothing personal. It was just business. And at some point, he literally falls down. There's a big couch divan thing that the queen is seated on, and he flops forward onto that. He's probably crying. And at just that moment, the king walks back in. Now, he might have said, and it does say, by the way, that Haman is begging because he thinks that the king has gone out to devise some terrible punishment for him, and he probably has. But if you think it can't get any worse, at the moment he falls down, you don't flop onto the couch with the queen, in the king's palace. And that's not what he's doing. But Xerxes comes back in. He goes, what are you thinking? And now he's really furious. Now there's no way he lives through this, and he knows it.
Then Harbona, one of the eunuchs attending the king, said, there's a gallows 50 cubits high at Haman's house. He had it built for Mordecai, who gave the report that saved the king. Hang him on it, declared the king. So they hanged Haman on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. Then the fury of the king subsided.
So here you go. Haman is probably not really well liked anyway. But when the king sees this going on and says, would he attack the queen in my own palace while I'm here? And Haman, it says that as soon as the words came out of the king's mouth, they covered his face. You could see he probably turned white. He knows he's in trouble. And one of the eunuchs says, you know, I was over there and saw a gallows at his house. And they probably told, you know, we're having conversation about it being for Mordecai. The gallows is for Mordecai. You remember the guy who saved your life? Yeah, he was going to hang him on that today. And it's a perfect solution. I mean, it is, you know, symmetry that Xerxes says, hang him on the thing, you know, that he was planning on putting Mordecai on. It's perfect.
But you think like this is the end of the story, but it gets a little wackier.
We have more chapters.
Chapter 8, that same day, King Xerxes, yes,
Right before we go, we know that it's not hanging in the American Western history,
Well, I don't think so.
but they used to hang those guys, was it a cross like the Romans?
Other people used crosses, but the Romans really like perfected it. I mean, they didn't, nobody, best I can tell, used it anything like to the extent that Rome did. Even Rome, though, this is not a thing that you do a lot of, or people will have enough of you and rise up. So the best I can tell is mostly they didn't hang people from a rope in this culture. But was it a cross? Funny you should ask that. I looked into it when we were going through this before. I don't think so. I don't see anything that said they used crosses. Yeah.
Chapter 8, that same day, King Xerxes awarded Queen Esther the estate of Haman, the enemy of the Jews, and Mordecai entered the king's presence because Esther had revealed his relation to her. The king removed the signet ring he had recovered from Haman and presented it to Mordecai. And Esther appointed Mordecai over the estate of Haman.
So you see some things happening. You see some parallels. He gives Haman's estate to the queen, and for the queen to have this estate, this land, it means she's got a little income of her own now, you know. But it's also the gesture. This guy was going to kill you. Now you own everything that he used to own, and it is intended to be that kind of a gesture, and that serves as a good warning to anybody else who might think about plotting against people like this, that the king's not going to tolerate it. And then what was
the king recovered the signet ring.
Oh yeah, the signet ring. Go back and remember, there's a decree out there that says that in December they're going to go kill, somebody's going to go kill a whole bunch of Jews, and it's signed with the king's signet ring. So the king brings Mordecai in, and he says, you know what? You served me well. You revealed the plot against me. You handled this in such a good way. He makes Mordecai his advisor. He gives the estate to, so the Jews are suddenly on the upswing. You see that. There's now a Jew who becomes Xerxes' chief advisor, and he hands him the signet ring. And that means that Mordecai can write a decree, stamp it with the king's signet ring, and it becomes law. But as you're going to see, that's still a problem, because there's already a decree out here that says the Jews are going to get killed, and it's a law. It can't be revoked. This is a problem.
Verse 3, and once again Esther addressed the king. She fell at his feet weeping and begged him to revoke the evil scheme of Haman the Agagite, which he had devised against the Jews. The king extended the golden scepter towards Esther, and she arose and stood before the king. If it pleases the king, she says, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the matter seems proper to the king, and I am pleasing in his sight, may an order be written to revoke the letters that the scheming Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, wrote to destroy the Jews in all the king's providence. For how could I bear to see the disaster that would befall my people? How could I bear to see the destruction of my kindred? So King Xerxes said to Queen Esther, the queen, and Mordecai the Jew, behold, I have given Haman's estate to Esther, and he was hung on the gallows because he attacked the Jews. Now you may write in the king's name as you please regarding the Jews, and seal it with the royal signet ring. For a decree that is written in the name of the king and sealed with the royal signet ring cannot be revoked.
This is a dilemma, because there's already an order out there that in December, whatever it is, the 13th of Hadar, I don't remember, that they're going to be killed. And Esther falls down in front of the king. She hasn't been invited to do that. She's still taking a chance, but she says, can you please revoke this order? Now, can you, because I couldn't bear to see my people killed, not to mention she's one. He would never let her be killed. They'd find a way around it, but I just couldn't stand seeing this happen. And he says, look, I had Haman hung on his own gallows. I gave you his estate. I made Mordecai my advisor, and I gave him my signet ring. But I already made a decree, and it's stamped. If you can figure a way out of this, you're the advisor. If you can figure a way around it, write the decree, stamp it, and put my name on it. But I can't just revoke what's been signed and sealed. I can't do it. So it's an odd way of saying, putting it back on them. See what you can come up with, and I'm giving you my authority. This is a big step for him to say, I'm gonna let you write your own law, but you're gonna have to figure out a way to do this that doesn't cause a problem with the one I've already signed.
And so it's sort of hard to swallow that he can't revoke his own thing, but that's the way it was because of
people govern. There's a term you probably know, the consent of the governed. No matter how powerful the king is, if enough people get sick of him and rise up, through history, kings have been taken down by their people thousands and thousands of times. And they made this law that is basically supposed to say, no one is above the law, not even the king. If it's put into the law of the Medes and the Persians, that's that. And so the king can't, you don't want a capricious king. You don't want somebody that changes his mind daily because you don't know how to live. You're afraid you're going to do something and the law says you can do it. And then the king says, I'm having a bad day. I changed the law, kill him. You see how people couldn't live like that. So the law of the Medes and the Persians says, once it's put into law, even the king is subject to it. They're telling us a lot here. This story makes perfect sense. And Xerxes says, I don't know how we're getting around this. You're smart people. Here, you figure it out if you can, but I can't revoke the law.
Pardon me, back to that first paragraph. What do we know about Esther revealing her relationship with Mordecai? What did that queen tell her? I'm a Jew, I'm a daughter, I'm an adopted daughter of Mordecai. He's my uncle. What do we know about what Esther?
Well, I think it's a safe assumption. Xerxes has just learned that there's a plot to kill all these Jews, and Mordecai is a Jew. And she says, the queen says, not only that, but he's my adopted father, and I'm a Jew too. That's going to be of interest to Xerxes, don't you think? Oh my God, wait a minute. Oh my gosh, this guy cooked up a plan that would include killing my queen and had, put my stamp on it. I think that's all it means is she revealed the relationship, which says he's my stepfather. And I'm also a Jew. I'm one of the ones that's going to be scheduled to be killed.
And what I go here is Esther saying to the king, I would basically like you if I didn't tell you the truth and nothing but the truth.
I don't think so.
Understand?
Well, because she wasn't required to. The thing that you find out just like in Babylon, is that they bring people in from everywhere, and they really don't care about who you came from. The funny thing is, they see the Jews as being very standoffish, and it irritates them that they only worship one God. Both here with Xerxes, Persia, and in Babylon, they just worshiped all kinds of gods, and they didn't care where you were from, literally. And I know that may sound odd, but in Babylon, it couldn't be any more clear. And Xerxes is just behaving the same way. So I don't think there was ever, he really didn't care where she's
He didn't
from.
ask.
He's got 127 provinces. Yeah.
Hey, Scott?
Which should indicate to us that he's open to all kinds of options, even if he doesn't care, as long as you ask it to me.
That's
That's
right.
right.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the husband-wife relationship, and you don't tell the truth, you're starting off on the wrong foot.
Mary told me that she golfed and fished when Mary told me that she golfed and fished when we were dating, and I didn't hold that against her. Gene, I don't know what to tell you. I don't think she lied to him. I just don't think it ever came up. The fact that she's a Jew, it just never came up.
It's not important to him, yeah.
When this hits and this edict, and she reveals, look, Mordecai, the guy that saved your life, he's a Jew. He's going to be killed. And he knows that now. Xerxes knows. But she says, look, he's my adopted father. I'm a Jew. And now Xerxes is angry. That's what we're being told.
We gotta resuscitate Haman back again.
You got to resuscitate Haman?
Yeah, because Mary lied to you, so.
Oh. No, she had actually golfed once at a corporate outing and hit some putts, and she had actually
Julie's laughing.
fly fished at a corporate outing. So
Julie knew me during this time.
she didn't really lie. You understand that? And I think that's kind of how.
She didn't tell the whole truth.
I think that's how this went.
Yeah, hey, Scott, what was the relationship geographically between Babylon and Persia? Were they one and the same, or they in the same general area?
And I should know this. I'm trying to picture it back. Susa is up where we consider Iran, and Babylon would have been kind of southwest of that. Yeah.
Because I mean, during the first captivity with Nebuchadnezzar, he chose the best out of the Jews to take to Babylon.
Well, he did. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's like you say,
He wanted the rich kids and the influencers that we have today but he wanted people from everywhere. Remember Daniel? Okay, and he's taken in, and he becomes one of the magi, right? They were from all over the world. These guys love to bring teaching and knowledge in from everywhere and try and benefit from all of it. I mean, they really celebrate that, if you will.
It only becomes a problem when you disobey.
That's true.
It's
we-
10.
Okay, are we done?
Mhm.
Where did we finish?
Well, we finished that, the King Xerxes had said, it's your problem, you figure it out. So we'll figure it out
That's
next week.
that's a good place to
Yeah,
stop.
I think so.
God, we have such a limited view of the world. We see only what affects us so much of the time. And there are so many things, there are so many people that you work with, that you have your hand on, and we walk past them and we don't recognize that they're part of the plan too. You show us in these words the fact that you have a long plan, and it includes us. We're thankful for the reminder, but we need reminders more often than that. We tend to think that we can go our own way. Be with us this week. If I ask again every week something, that you show us that we see behind what's going on, we see your hand, and realize that you really are in control. And as much as we try and go around you and do what we see fit, when we seek you, you do have a plan for us. Those of us that seek you out, remind us this week. Show us that. Be with those we pray for. Always we try and remember you give us the gift of each other. This week, when we talk to you, we raise up these ones to you. We really want to see the healing and the peace that comes from your presence. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, guys. Amanda's like, I know I need to go get Finley again. And we got to see Terry and Rob last night. They too were at Doodads. They know where to sit. They sit up at the bar, so they don't have to wait for
So
as
are we
long a
ever
time.
gonna
Was
get
it,
wrap
did
our
it take a
stuff
long
and
time to get the
together?
food?
We need to have dinner or something.
Did it take a long
I
time
want
to
to
get
ask
the
you a
food?
question before you.
She's
Sure.
typing.
Oh,
know,
she's
it's
typing.
funny.
Yeah. Okay.
Logically,
That. Really
I
good.
get what you're saying.
Everyone's typing.
it just happens that I know that
Huh.
these guys revel. They take great pride.
Very surely you
in-
golfed
in-
more than
in
that one
getting the
time.
cream of the
Yeah,
And you
crop
ran the
everywhere.
tournament.
Yeah, he's just giving me heck. He's always giving me heck about that. You can come help me on that. Well, you
Fair.
guys have a good time. Amanda
Enjoy-
and
enjoy
Billy
the-
and Elise leave at 4 today. so-
Enjoy the rest of your time with them.
I
You remember
shall,
how
I
easily
shall.
you got
Talk
through
to
the
you
last
guys
one?
later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Oh,